Hi, this is Ashley Swartz, founder of Furious Corp. Welcome to episode 3 in our 12-part series about building the Adaptable Media Enterprise. We're co-publishing this with Beat TV and very excited to be doing so. So today we're going to use a lovely little framework and continue to deconstruct our industry called the 4 Ps, right? The 4 Ps of marketing. So product, price, place, and promotion. I'm going to first talk about television and sort of operators, so content owners, creators like broadcasters and programmers, and then operators, and sort of analyze old media. And then I'm just kind of going to get into advertising specifically. So product, right? Well, if we look at content overall, I mean, old school, it was pretty simple, right? There weren't a lot of formats. Like maybe you watch Lawrence Welk on Friday night. You had, game shows and maybe a few sort of scripted series, but ultimately there were 3 or 4 formats, and then the news and sports on television, right? It was pretty simple. Early stage of, distribution and being an operator, you didn't have a lot of choice. You had broadcasters and maybe, cable networks. They sort of created and were forced you to take on as bundles, but ultimately at the end of the day, the industry has changed dramatically. There are many products now. Now we have pure digital publishers. It's gotten much more complex. The formats have gotten much more complex, and what actually is good content has changed radically as well over time. Price. Well, when you're, a 3 sort of trick pony, right? 3 major broadcast networks, you sort of, and your only revenue model is advertising, you guys sort of set the price, right? It's a controlled marketplace, what advertising costs, etc. Whether or not you could actually collude as a market, I'm just saying that it's probably a lot easier to control price and make sure you get that gain year over year. Well, now, the smallest bundle, I think, or cable package is like 210 channels, right? There are all these cable nets popping up. As much time is being spent on digital video or consuming digital video content by some audiences as television. So ultimately, price is something that has become much more challenged because the market has evolved, and ultimately also the revenue streams have changed dramatically, right? How do you price something on a different platform? It's still a 15 or 30, but is a targeted audience worth more? And now all of a sudden we don't just want to buy age and gender anymore. You want to buy yogurt eating moms that are buying a car, right? As that changes, the sort of ability to actually price your inventory becomes harder. Place. Distribution. Well, it used to be over the air, right? And also there was like one piece of hardware and it was in the living room. Now, then there was the set-top box. Now it's any connected device at any place at any time. And it could be through a website, it could be through an application, it could be through someone else's sort of closed ecosystem or distribution, through a distribution partnership. The reality is the places of distribution have sort of grown in an insurmountable way, and they're unwieldy in some ways. So the idea of what is owned and operated and shared also has created a much more complex actual value chain for content owners. And then promotion. The reality is that with all the competition and choice for audiences right now, and the fact that the new business of digital in particular is about chasing audience and gaining them and retaining them, the reality is that promotion is more king right now, I think, than content is, specifically in the business of new media. And that's what has changed so much for traditional media companies. They're being forced to evolve their business and distribute on new platforms, and ultimately their old business is, let's say it's flat, right? Because people are finding more time in the day to watch content, not necessarily watching less of television. And what these guys are trying to figure out, specifically the old media companies, is how do they, drive discovery? That's still a nut that no one's cracked. How do they get audiences to come back, etc.? So promotion really has become the new king, if you will, and the biggest challenge of these guys. I think NBC is the largest advertiser in the US, if you will, if you look at the value of the inventory they place across their networks. Let's take this and contextualize it for advertising, right? What are the 4 Ps for advertising? Because I think they're actually a little bit different. So I want to take some artistic license here. Okay, obviously I want to tell you that the first one's profit, which is our platform. But I'll sort of go from there and say that, okay, in my perspective, the 4 Ps are something different. Productize, right? You have all these different formats, 15, 30s. Maybe you're selling on a click, on a performance basis or a click basis, or you're selling on a, per completion, if you will, as one broadcaster is doing now and driving amazing premiums in market. So ultimately, how do you productize this, right? Because it's not just selling a 30-second spot on age and gender and a GRP anymore. So you really have to sort of think smart about it. How do you package it across all of your platforms, right? Maybe you are just selling 15s and 30s and you're selling selling it on a CPM basis, but do you bundle across all, all of your properties? Do you actually, do you sort of package it by genre? Do you package it by audience? Do you package it by, by network? Like, how do you manage that, right? That's a very big challenge. How do you price it? Because a CPM is different than a GRP and reach and frequency, right? But ultimately, many more and more marketers want one audience, one price. So pricing this and managing it, especially when you start to add value by leveraging the power of your first-party data as a content owner and offering addressable or targeted inventory, or specifically selling based on audience versus selling on impression or point. And then last, it's, this all comes together through planning, right? Planning meaning portfolio management. Like, this is not about selling, eyeballs anymore, right? Or reach and frequency. This is really about managing a portfolio of assets. And how do you actually do that, right? So targeted, premium, addressable, etc. And that completely changes the business if we look at how a media company actually takes its products to market for marketers and advertisers. So I think this is, super exciting. This is all foundational, because looking at the new challenges that are created by digital distribution is really foundational for us to be able to have a conversation about where we go and how we help ourselves and one another as an industry, building the solutions and the tools to not just survive but thrive in the future. Conversation, please give it back, and we look forward to seeing you in episode 4. Thank you.